Welcome to another edition of The Naked Truth. I'm Ramon Rowan.
I'm John Singletary.
And today we're going to be talking about black wealth. John, I know you know a lot about history, and I do a lot of studying myself in history. And when I look at the conditions of the status of the wealth in the black community, it is really sad. It was an article I read recently to where they said that in order for a black family to catch up to the wealth gap between the white and the black, it would take 226 years to catch up. 226 years. I was shocked. Yeah, it's a long time. It's a long time. When we look at wealth in America, black wealth in America, we are on what life support, really. You think about the fact that when we take a look at certain individuals, you can't say just because you can point out Oprah Winfrey, you can point out Bob Johnson and some other wealthy blacks, but for the most part, they don't represent the black community.
They represent a small portion of the black community, but on the whole, we have been denied the right to black wealth, primarily because we've been denied access to the funding streams, whether it be government contracts, whether it be the opportunity through business to be mainstream. And that's not to say that it does not happen sometime, but on the whole, when we take a look at $24,000 a year in North Charleston, the average black makes barely enough to sustain, certainly not enough to create any type of wealth in a family.
Right.
And we look at the average white, $61,000. It's not only enough to sustain, to enjoy a different quality of life, but also to accumulate wealth. So when we consider for an extended period of time, that situation being in effect and being systemic from the ground up, foundational for America, it allows one sector of the population to continuously create wealth, maintain wealth, while the other can barely sustain themselves. Damon Fordham puts out on his YouTube channel quite a bit. Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Concerning history. The Black
Collective. I don't agree with his politics, but that's another story.
Yeah. But his history is good.
It is.
His history is good. Very informative. The Black Collective always got something out there, cutting edge concerning what is going on in the black community. And when we consider the fact that the narrative has been controlled primarily by white business. We have been portrayed as criminals and inhumane when they want to set us back, whether it be from Tulsa, Rosewood, Wilmington, you name it. Every single time there seems to be some progress made for a black community as a whole, there is an overriding concern by mainstream America to dehumanize those African Americans, to portray them as criminals, and to come in and then annihilate the whole community.
Yeah, sure enough.
So that push then has to start over. We already know our black banks are in trouble. On the de-escalation. Same with insurance companies. Same with the economic empowerment community that would allow us to then have a leg up in terms of accumulating wealth. So those are the kinds of things that we have to look for. Those are kinds of things that we have to still pool resources together and continually move forward and trying to come together as African Americans. Oftentimes, I meet a business person, and for them, their push is to say that, business is all about the relationships. Got not much to do with race. And I hear that from those who are doing well, black and white.
Mm-hmm.
If that is the case, then why is it that there, in terms of banks, are we struggling?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it in terms of insurance companies we are almost non-existent?
Right.
Why is it in terms of contracts we can have, like in North Charleston, $67 million spent in contracts last year,
mm-hmm.
$2 million going to African Americans,
mm-hmm.
$66 million in jobs, $10 million going to African Americans. So while some may get through the cracks,
mm-hmm.
we cannot ignore the fact that there is a division when it comes to access to what is required to build wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And that it is done in a discriminatory fashion. If we ignore that, then what we do is we only allow a select few to move forward. And so we must then become comfortable with that, just to say that at least we have one or two in the game. And it's just simply not good enough.
Not acceptable. I think, John, also, you have to see how we get the past. We have examined history through the lens of the truth lens. I believe it was 1862 when they did the Homestead Act. Mm-hmm. Blacks could not participate, or very few blacks. I'm not sure if have you heard any black participating in the Homestead Act? They're given thousands of acres.
Yeah, Homestead exemption now, but the Homestead Act that you're talking about, where they were able to go out that MLK talked about. Going to D.C. to get the check, because they were actually given not only land, but they were given loans,
grants,
and they were given education, as well as mechanizations
mm-hmm.
to increase productivity.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware of any.
Mm-hmm.
That was
no, I'm not either. The other one is that after the end of slavery, that the 40 acres and a mule. Now, we looked at it saying that, 40 acres is not the thousands that they gave the Europeans.
Old mule that Sherman didn't want to feed, so he had to do something with it.
But they took that back.
Sure.
So you look at the wealth, because the wealth that those received during the Homestead Act, the wealth that they received, that's still in their family. We're talking about millions of dollars that are still in their family. So when we look at the wealth, and you look at every time in Wilmington, I did Wilmington in 1898, blacks were doing very well in Wilmington. And that was a problem for white supremacists. They didn't like that. So there ended up becoming the false allegations that black men were raping white women, which wasn't a case. They just, like dark meat. They want to try dark meat. Had to put a little levity in there. But anyway, and so that wasn't the case. And so whenever you look at these pockets of prosperity in the black community, mm-hmm. I believe that when David Banner came here to speak here in Charleston, and he said there's two things that white supremacists don't like. They love their life and their money. And so when blacks were being prosperous in Wilmington, riot. Blacks were being prosperous in Rosewood, what happened? Riot. Blacks were being prosperous in Tulsa, what happened? Riot. And so we become accustomed to, like, I remember when I first got out the Navy, and I, got out of the Navy, had a little bit of money in my pocket, and I wanted to have this nice car. And guy said, "Look here, now this is 1982, 81. Well, correction, 91." And he said, "Look here, boy, this is a brother talking to me. Don't drive that car here to the plant, because they're gonna fire you. They're gonna fire you. You can't have a nice car." And so that mentality is still there. I mean, it's still going on today. Look at the way that we're stopped. These young boys, a young guy driving a nice car, a black man driving a nice car, he gets stopped. My dad, we bought a 1966 Chevy Impala, the convertible. My father in I think it was 1970, my father got pulled up and arrested. And because he was driving a 1966,
and we can bring it closer to home. When we take a look at what's going on with the Gullah people here in South Carolina, right here in Charleston,
I heard it.
What is going on is that we have the wealth that has been in those families for years in the form of land at that time that might not have been as lucrative in terms of the value of the property as it is now, because back then there was gators and everything else out there.
Right.
The land was not as valuable as it is now, but now that it has become valuable, one of the things that has allowed it to stay in the family was the fact that it was heirs' property. But there's a loophole now that has been wedged into the family's tradition and history of keeping that property in the family, and it has caused gobs of property in the Gullah families to be taken away. And so those are the kinds of things that happen where anytime there's value that's put in that black community, they're going to try and suck it out. They're going to try and suck it out. Now, we can't blame others for everything that happened in our community. We're not saying that we're trying to do that. What we're saying is that we need to show unity. We have to begin to come together and use the system in which we live in order to give greater protection to the community as well as to ourselves. Voting is a process that allows you to do that. 33,000 African Americans registered already to vote in North Charleston. The incumbent received 6,500 votes. The largest sector of the population in North Charleston are African American males, but yet they get the least out of this system. 16,000 plus African American males registered to vote. If they would just come to the polls, they themselves are large enough to determine who goes into the seat so that they can get more out of the city. But as a result of some complacency, some not understanding, lack of education in terms of politics, the largest sector is getting the least, and the smallest sector is getting the most. And it's only because we fail to get out and get to the polls and stand in unity. We brought more people to the polls than any sector in the history of North Charleston. In terms of African Americans voting, more than everybody else who came, more than everybody else in the history of the city. But because we were not unified, we still walked away from the table with nothing. And so it's more than just getting registered. It's more than just going to the polls. You have to stand in unison. And so what we're saying to you is that you look at the system in which you're in. Understand what power voting is. Understand how you can take what's already there and get everything that you want.
There is power in our vote, especially when we're unified in our actions. And you have to, whether or not they're Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter. If that candidate is operating in your best interest, you need to vote for him. And so voting for Mayor Sonny, who's done nothing for blacks, maybe had a few tokens in his stable, but by and large, he has done nothing for blacks. So we need you to get yourself to understand the importance of voting, and because that's also going to mean the increase of black wealth in your local area.
It brings about black wealth. We had here in North Charleston, just to lay it to you plain, we had more blacks to vote than any other time in history, and to outvote all other races combined. More people, 5,513 African Americans came to the table and voted. All other races combined wasn't 5,000. but we had 2,000 African Americans in a predominantly Democrat city, 2,000 that voted, African Americans voted for a white Republican mayor who endorsed Donald Trump. That's mind-boggling. How can 2,000, even though it's a nonpartisan race, and we understand it's a nonpartisan race.
Why Donald Trump? I don't understand. I thought it was Mayor Summey.
Well, it is Mayor Summey. But what I'm saying is that when we take a look at the country as a whole, and the fact that the policies in which he has stated, it's not inclusive of the African American community as a whole.
That means that you have 2,000 African Americans. I like to use what Malcolm X said. Those who have voted for Mayor Summey, you're a traitor to your race. Can't get on. Now I'm just quoting Malcolm X. I know you may not respect me, but I know you respect Malcolm X. You're a traitor to your race.
But the fact that 2,000 out of the 5,513, the vote was not split among the three black candidates.
No,
and everybody thinks, well, the other two black candidates received 700 votes, 200 for one, and I think 500 for another. But the votes were split between white and black, 2,000 votes going to someone outside of your race who has never done you any good.
None.
Only harm.
Right. And
the fact that when you take a look at, you had an opportunity to put $50 million worth of jobs and contracts into your community, it's very difficult for you to for us to go as an African American community to anybody and to say that we need help because of discrimination.
And you know what? The answer for us in the black community, where it comes down to wealth, it's in our hands. We don't need to go outside.
Yeah.
The answer is within us, and the answer John just gave you, it is the vote. You need to vote, and vote in your best interest. Well, up to you, John.
We appreciate you watching the channel. We hope that you continue to subscribe. It's necessary for us to continually move forward. We hope that you will make comments. Outside of that, get involved in the political arena in your neighborhood. This has been another edition of
The Naked Truth.